Hey, good morning, everybody. Scary here. May 12th, Tuesday. I'm going to try to stack a couple of these up today because I'm going to be having surgery tomorrow and I may not be able to do any of these for a few days after that. Today's episode is going to be called My Girlfriend Was a Cantaloupe. Yeah, it's going to go a little bit left of center, this one. But I feel it's necessary to share the story because it's a true story. Like I said, I'd say, well, all my stories are true. Some are ad-libbed a little bit, but I'd say 99.9% of them are all life experiences. This one goes back over 20 years ago. Like I said, I was in a bunch of different locations with my company, and this location was a grand opening situation where there was going to be a brand new store. Let me move this camera a little bit, if you will. There we go, better. It was a brand new store. It was under construction. It was in a high-rise building, and we were on the lower level, and we had underground parking. It was a neat store. And they hired the best of the best department heads to get this thing ready to be grand opening ready. They had, this camera's all jacked up, pardon me. They hired a bunch of people off the street to help with the departments. They were going to be department clerks or grocery clerks or front end clerks. They were racking and stacking this new store for grand opening. And I was in the meat department. I was one of the assistant managers. There was 4 assistant managers in this department. Like I said, they racked and stacked this store in the company. They wanted to make it the new premier store. Of all the clerks, we hired like 7 clerks, all walks of life, off the street, that had never been with the company. And they had to train them. And what we were training them to do was to clean the saws at night, the meat saws, to clean the floors, to wait on the service counter to help people, to stock shelves on the floor when they were low, like ground beef, turkey, stuff like that, ground turkey. Just to do clerk work. Of those people, we had one guy. His name was Bennett. Bennett was uncomfortably, I hate saying that word, polite. He was unusually polite. In a kind of a quirky way. And he was from Minnesota, and he was a Mennonite. That's all I knew about him. He was a Mennonite from Minnesota. He was an interesting guy in an uncomfortable way. So polite. Very respectful. Wore these fucking little glasses on his face. Had a 5 o'clock shadow all day long. Dark black curly hair. About 5'5", kind of short. Could have been the size of a jockey. And he always walks around like this with his hands clasped in front of him and goes, "Good morning, Gary. What would you like me to do today?" That's how he talked. "Good morning, Gary. What would you like me to do today?" Very polite. In a weird, kind of quirky way. And he was a very good worker, but weird. Just weird. Polite and weird. If you know people like that, he was that. And this was after grand opening. We were like a month into business was wide open, and I had a chance to talk to him one day in the back. Everyone in the department, kind of bonded. We all got along. It was like what? It was like 11 of us, a bunch of people in the meat department, and to a point where some of these clerks were going out drinking and smoking dope and whatever after work. They were getting along, but Bennett was like an outsider because he was nerdy, kind of weird, kind of intelligent, kind of like just weird. I was talking to him one day and I said, "Hey, Bennett, you said you're from Minnesota. What's up with that?" He goes, "Oh, yes, Gary. My family, we were Mennonites, and I did something in high school where I was asked to leave the family trust, and I could not come back ever again. So I packed up my 1971 Mercury Monarch and I drove to Ohio." I said, "Why Ohio of all places? You could have gone anywhere." I have a couple of friends that I know from playing online gaming that live in Ohio, in the Cincinnati area, and they let me stay with them, and I'm living here. Weird, weird. Online gaming, a Mennonite, kicked out of the family trust for doing something in high school that was so profoundly weird or warranted kicking him out of the family unit to come to Ohio to live with guys that he played online gaming with, whatever kind of gaming that was, out of the Mennonite family trust. And that was the beginning of a conversation, because I was curious about him. There was something about him I was just extremely curious about. Everybody else in the department thought he was a weirdo, but I was just curious, because I've always been curious. So I got to know him. I liked him. He was nice. He was good. He was a good little worker. He was nice. One day, I was walking out. My shift was over, and I went down. We had a parking garage underneath the store. I went down to my car, and there he was, in the elevator with me, going down with a few other guys. And we walk out together, and I see his Mercury Monarch. This thing was spotless. It was an ugly brown. But if you've never seen a Mercury Monarch, and it's like a 1971 model, check them out. They're cool looking cars. They're boats. It's like a big old boat. And so I was chatting with him near his car one day, this one particular day after work, just shooting a breeze with him. And I was asking him more about what it was like to be a Mennonite, what it was like to live in Minnesota. He was born and raised in Minnesota. And he was loosening up around me because he saw that I was being friends with him. I was the only one that took time in my department to really try to bond with him. And this one particular day after work, I said to him, Bennett, you got any girlfriends? He goes, no, Gary, I don't. I'm a little uncomfortable around girls. I said, you are? I said, you're a good looking guy. What gives, you know? Have you ever had a girlfriend? And he goes, well, Gary, yes and no. Yes and no, but not of the flesh. I said, well, you said not of the flesh. Well, what's that supposed to mean? And before he answered, I said, well, before you answer that question, I have to ask you this. Are you still a virgin? Have you ever been with a woman? Have you ever bumped uglies with a woman? And he just kind of looked at me for a minute, kind of strange, like he didn't understand what I said. And he said, I am a virgin. I am a virgin of the flesh, but not of the fruit. I said, well, what did you say? Bennett, what did you say? He said, I'm a virgin of the flesh, but not of the fruit. I said, can you explain what you just said to me? Because it was blowing my mind what he said to me. And he said, when I told you that I got kicked out of the family trust, there was a reason for that. One day after school, me and two of my friends went to a grocery store, and we all picked out a cantaloupe that we liked, that felt good because we were squeezing it to see if it. And I'm listening. I'm laser focused on this story with this kid, Bennett. We bought this cantaloupe, and we took it back. We had a pole barn in my backyard where we kept all of our farm equipment, because the Mennonites had a big farm. They did a lot of farming. And we tunneled a hole in the side of the cantaloupe. And now I know where I'm going. I just don't know. I don't want to hear this. But I'm listening. This is sick and twisted. I'm thinking, oh my God, what am I hearing? We tunneled a hole into the cantaloupe, and we pulled out some of the seeds. We scooped it out with a spoon. They used a spoon to scoop out some of the seeds. And we took turns with the cantaloupe. And I said, Bennett, well, I knew what he was doing, but I wanted him to say it. I said, what do you mean you took turns with the cantaloupe? Took turns doing what, Bennett? And he giggled. He's like, I said, no. I said, you fucked a cantaloupe? You fucked a cantaloupe. And he said, yes, we all took turns. You watched each other do it to the cantaloupe, all three of you guys? Yes, Gary, we did. We experimented with it. You don't need to. I said, you don't need to explain anymore. I've heard enough. What did you do with the cantaloupe after? I'm just curious. He said they kept the cantaloupe in the shed where his father kept all of his tools. I said, you left it out of refrigeration, Bennett? You put it in a shed in the barn? He goes, we figured it would be the safest place to put it until the next day when we wanted to use it again. That's what he said. And fast forward 24 hours. And his mother and his father call him into the pole barn when he gets off of school. And he goes out to the pole barn. And his mother and father call him in the pole barn. And on this workbench is the cantaloupe. And Bennett described the cantaloupe that was used up by he and his two buddies. Still had substance flowing out of the hole. Human substance flowing out of the hole. And that was when his family kicked him out of the family trust. I don't know. All he said was my parents asked me to pack a suitcase and leave. That whatever you did was sick and vile and went against the family trust and you had to leave. That you fucked a cantaloupe. And he told me the story in the parking garage with a straight face. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had never, I've experimented in my life. I started out in my 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and even my early 60s, having fun with women, exploring, trying crazy shit. Never once did I ever entertain fucking a cantaloupe. But this kid Bennett did that. So fast forward 8 months. 9 months goes by. The store's not open quite a year yet. And he puts in his 2 weeks notice. He's leaving. He's leaving Cincinnati. I don't know where he was going, but he said he was leaving Cincinnati. And by now, because he told the wrong guy he fucked the cantaloupe. Because then I told all the other guys. Oh, yeah. I got a juicy story like that. I got to share, So 2 guys. There was 2 guys I knew of that did this. For his going away present, they went to the produce department and they got a cantaloupe. His last day there, they had a little party for him upstairs. They had a cake. Because my company would do that when people were leaving. They'd have a cake, a little party, and a send-off. These 2 guys went to the produce department, got a cantaloupe. They drew eyes on the cantaloupe, eyelashes, eyeliner. They put a nose on the cantaloupe. They put a hole. They tunneled a hole in the cantaloupe. And they put lipstick around the hole of the cantaloupe. And they put it on and they carved out a bottom piece of the round part. Just sliced off the bottom part of the cantaloupe so it would sit level. And they put it on the hood of his car. and when and when he went downstairs, down the elevator, there was a few guys in the parking garage who were giving him a send off, and they were hiding behind a couple other cars. They wanted to see Bennett walk up to his car, and he walked up to his car and he looked at the Cantaloupe, and he was like this, looking at it. And he's looking around, because I was down in the parking garage. I wanted to see it too. He's looking around like this to who did it. And then we all came out from around the car and we were laughing. He goes, "That's a very good joke, you guys. I'm going to keep her. It was nice working with all of you. Farewell." He picked up the Cantaloupe, opened up the passenger door, set her down, or it down in the passenger seat, shut the door, walked around, got in the driver's seat, and drove away. I wanted to share that story today because I had thought about that and I remembered that. I remembered that story. And every now and then, when I walk in the morning, I come up with content, and I just think about stuff I've done in my career, and that would have to have been one of the craziest stories I could ever recall. Was Bennett, and his girlfriend was a cantaloupe. He was a version of the flesh, but not of the fruit. When you think you've heard it all, you got to come to my show to hear some more. That's all I got. I'm going to try to do one more today, sometime in the afternoon. If I come up with some more content, I'm going to try to stack them. Because like I said, I'm going to have surgery tomorrow, and I may not be doing them for a couple days. So anyway, you take care of yourselves and each other. Have a fantastic day. Take care. Peace out.